Hey, what is going on, everybody? Boilon here, back for another video on Marvel Strike Force. In today's video, we're going to be talking about the top 5, maybe 6 teams that honestly I think people need to avoid. There's a lot of teams in Marvel Strike Force, but I think some people forget that over time they kind of lose their usefulness. And I want to talk about these kind of teams that on the surface probably look like they're a good idea, but might not be a good idea now because of where we are in the game. So if you're ready to go, everybody, let's boil this down. Now, before we get started on the list of teams that I want to talk about in this video, I want to raise your attention to, this is my character spreadsheet of Marvel Strike Force Now 2024. But anyways, oh, that went to the top. So I have, this list of all of the characters in the game, which is a lot, right? And this is what I use in Gauge to kind of know how relevant characters and teams are now. Mostly because there was a blog post a while back that basically said that, Scopely is only committed to making these characters in the meta or meta viable for about a year. So, basically that tells you, well, obviously the newest characters are going to have the longest longevity, and the ones that are older, and some of these are going to be older teams, but, a lot of times people just don't know when to give a team up. So that's why in this video, I want to talk about these teams and why they're probably not the best idea to start now. This is going to be largely aimed towards new and mid-game players. If you're a veteran and you still haven't touched these characters, I probably would not do that because, you've kind of lost that kind of opportunity chance, I suppose, to build the team. And that's really what it comes down to, right? Obviously, the newest teams, if we scroll down to, which we're not going to be in this video, but if you talk about like the newest stuff within the last patch or so, then obviously these are going to have the most bang for your buck because, you're going to have at least a year out to ride with them, right? So that's just basically how the game is. So let's go off and start the list. Okay, so starting the bottom of the list in this team video, I want to talk about the Masters of Evil because it's really, really important to do that. And it's really tough because this team is just over a year old. They came out between February and March of 2023. But the problem is that you can't unlock Nova if you don't have them. So it creates a bit of a problem because Nova's requirements is Masters of Evil and Quicksilver for node number, I believe it's 2, right? Anyways, you pretty much need them to unlock Nova, which is going to lead into a problem that I'm going to talk about later on as well. So the best character on this list is going to be Kang, but the rest of them, honestly, at this point in time, it's a really bad idea to invest any amount of resources into them. I would go as far as saying, because of Cabal exists now, that you could do Kang by himself. He's still a very strong character, and Kang plus Cabal is very, very strong. But the other 4 are definitely not worth any time or investment. I will, this is my alt account, by the way. I probably will go into investing Kang when I'm kind of done with my raid teams, but the rest of them are definitely not on the list, which causes some problems when it comes to unlocking Nova, who, again, we're going to be talking a little bit about him in this video as well. So Masters of Evil is just something that I kind of want to caution people against. They were one of the earlier kind of Cosmic Crucible teams, and they're still very strong now. So people are going to be using them as veteran players, right? Because you've already had that cost of that opportunity time to build them and use them. So a lot of people I know are going to comment in this video saying, "Oh, these characters are still good and good," but they're not when you consider that they've been out for like 14 months and that the newer characters are better to build now. If you want to build something Cosmic Crucible related, right, then you're going to build Cabal first, right? Because they're the most kind of premier sort of Crucible offense or whatever team that's going to make your value. You're not going to want to go back like over a year and touch these old characters that are just going to, fall out of the wayside quicker. So first off, Masters of Evil, but I still think Kang's worth a thumbs up. All right, coming in at number 4, maybe that we're at. I really need to talk about Infinity Watch. So we were talking about old ass teams. This is a super old ass team. Am I using them on my veteran account, on my main account? Yes. Am I going to continue to build them past where they are now? I don't think so. Now, I've tried to really justify this on a new player account, but I just can't because there's so many better things to do. So how do I justify this on my main account then? I have them at, I actually took them up to like 90-ish, G17 or so, and I'm using them on Crucible Defense on my main account. So how did I justify it there, but I can't justify it here? And I think it's just because I had invested in them so hard, when they were meta or more meta, that, putting them an extra 4 or 5 levels just wasn't a lot of extra resources, like when the level cap increased and whatnot. But, if you haven't done it at all, it's a huge amount of resources to invest into 5 characters, who, by all accounts, are not as good as the most meta recent teams within the last 6 to 9 months. And so this is really hard to justify if you're not spending money. That I think a lot of people will say that you should do this, but realistically, when push comes to shove on new and mid game accounts, that I just have not found a place for them. There is no places that I really need to have them. And I know this is funny because this is coming out at a time where Escape from Kiln requires Guardian and Infinity Watch characters, and often probably the best characters are still Gamora, Nebula, and Phyla-Vell, or Gamora, Adam Warlock, and Phyla-Vell, or whatever, or Nebula, some combination of these 3 characters here. If you're wanting to do that for that, I would just only build them to the necessary point that you need to clear that, and that's it, and none of the other characters. How many other times that Escape from Kiln is actually going to come around? It's really hard to say. Are they going to keep building on this? This might be a separate conversation down the line, but I would only raise them to the exact point that you need to clear these floors and nothing more. Because honestly, I do not think it's worth a good amount of your resources if you haven't already done so. Again, that opportunity cost is so important. Making sure that you invest in these characters like as they come out, like the newer characters as they come out, so that you have that full longevity of the team. And that's the only reason why people are continuing to build Infinity Watch, is because they did that when it was meta back fucking 2.5 years ago, and they've still just kind of carried it along. Eternals are another one. They're not on this list, but Eternals are another one who have kind of stood the test of time, so to speak, and that putting an extra 5 levels into them is really not much when it's only 2 characters. But anyways, Infinity Watch is a full 5-man team, and so that's where the problem causes. So number 4, Infinity Watch. Okay, and coming in at number 3, we have the New Warriors. Now, the only character on this list, this is very much like Masters of Evil, that there's one character that stands out for a particular reason, and that's going to be Deathpool. But aside from that, there is absolutely no reason why you need to build any of these other characters for new and mid-game accounts, and if you've already missed the boat as a veteran player, it's a bit too late. So sometimes you just have to kind of cut things off. You have to let things go. If you haven't already invested in it, then do not do it unless there's a very, very, very good reason. Now, unfortunately, or fortunately, maybe, hey, Deathpool might get a rework for Mercs for Money. Now, this isn't me saying anything. I don't know anything. But they do love their OG characters. And so I could see Deathpool coming back into fashion somehow with Scopely. And you do need to raise her to 90 G17 for Big Boy Apocalypse. So on a whole, that you're going to have to use her. And actually leveling her up is not that bad of an idea, because this is going to kind of lead into what I'm going to be talking about with one of the other teams later as to why I don't think that one's necessarily a good idea. But you will be able to pair some of that with Deathpool, because Deathpool is a very strong character. Also, interestingly, has a lot of text. Originally, the New Warriors were actually the Mystic Raid team, kind of 3-man, and then it moved into a Crucible team and whatnot. So there's a lot of text on Deathpool's kit that actually is related to raids. So we'll kind of carry over into another conversation about Mystic Raids in a little while anyways. But I just don't think that there's any value for these characters anymore. Yes, they're a very strong Crucible offense team, but again, you're really going to want to focus on the stuff that's kind of in front of you. So definitely the newer Crucible teams, the Cabals, the whatever's on the horizon, really, that you can use offensively, that you'll get more value for time. New Warriors is about a year old or more at this point in time. More if you're considering Cloak and Dagger, of course. It's just Byron Stark and Gwenpool that came out more recently. But either way, I don't think that you really should be spending a lot of money or a lot of resources in investing in gold and stuff into these characters. Please don't do it at all. In fact, you could probably leave them at level 1 if you haven't already, and then Deathpool is the only one you really need to bring up. So that's number 3, New Warriors. Let's move on to the next team. Number 2 is going to be the Nowhere team. Shocker, right? Based on what I said about Masters of Evil, you knew that this one was going to be on the list. Now, I actually kept them at level 1 on my main account. I've talked about this at length when it comes to talking about the Nowhere team. I think that if you're really big into Alliance War, you might want to build these, but the problem is that if you want to unlock Nova, just like I said earlier on about Masters of Evil, then you're going to need to build them. So you need to build Masters of Evil to be able to unlock Nova, because there's no shortcut. There's no real good way to unlock Nova using other characters, because it was Masters of Evil or Quicksilver. Or was it X Factor as well? There were some shitty choices. So unless they rework X Factor, there's no real alternative option to unlock Nova, which is absolutely dog shit, in my opinion. So, what does that mean for both the Nowhere team and Nova as a legendary character? That means I would not actually go out of my way to unlock Nova now. I would do whatever I need to do Dark Dimension Legendary, which ignores Nova, which means that I'm ignoring the rest of the team because there's no point in having the other four if you don't have Nova unlocked. So when it comes to Dark Dimension Legendary choices, I try to avoid putting Nova there in that category. So, who would I recommend now if you had to do something like that? It would be characters like Black Cat, Doc Ock, Green Goblin Classic. There's a new one. I know it's not out yet, but there's a new one on the horizon. Honestly, I think it's going to be with Mercs for Money in like a month's time. And then you could use just any of the other characters in the interim, right? Like any of the Horseman characters that I think are still going to be valid because you're going to have to raise them up to G17 for Apocalypse anyways. So those are your better choices. Nova, unfortunately, just even when he came out, like he's not a terrible character. It's just knowing what you know now about the characters that you have to raise up to get them unlocked. It's just not worth your time and resources because those characters as well have been kind of out the wayside, and I think that they really need to think about doing like a Scourge type thing soonish for Nova to make him a bit more easier to unlock because I don't think it's worth going out of your way to do for that trial event. It's something that I'm personally skipping on this alt account here. I'm honestly kind of skipping Black Cat as well. I'm going to be doing a 2-node D10 run to get her unlocked, but I'm not actually going out of my way because some of the traits are just flat out garbage, unfortunately, to get her unlocked. Green Goblin Classic is the only trial that I really focused on this account. So that's going to be your Nowhere at number 2. I do have an honorable mention that I want to bring up, though, before we get to our number 1 pick. Okay, so this one is not as bad because that's why it's an honorable pick and not actually on the list itself. But Undying, so I like the fact that they brought the Zombie Juggernaut event back around for people to unlock free to play. But I think it was an absolute dog shit bait and switch kind of strategy that they used with relation to this team and Escape from Kiln Tower because it was not necessary in the slightest. In fact, I think it may have made it harder to be able to complete by thinking that you need Undying to do floors 38 through 40, the villain bio section for Kiln. So I really, really, really hate that they did this. And this kind of made people think that they needed to spend a lot of resources on this team. This is the absolute definition of what I would call a luxury team. They're an Alliance War team. They're fun from what I heard. I don't have Zombie Juggernaut leveled on any of my accounts, but I do have Hela and Zombie Iron Man on my main account, and they're a lot of fun in Alliance War. But like I said, they're a definition of a luxury team. So if you have the excess gold, if you're a spender, then this is something that you would want to do. I think that Alliance War more broadly, if you want to engage in, you either need to make that your premier game mode that you kind of care about, or you need to spend the money in order to invest resources into these sets of characters. Because my priority, in my opinion, is things like Arena and Raids at the top, and then Crucible, and then War's like the last thing I think about. And so unfortunately, that means that the resources towards Undying is probably not your best bet. Unfortunately, it's a very fun team, and who knows, maybe we're going to get a 4th and 5th zombie character, but I'm still probably going to say the same thing about them because it's still that kind of luxury build. If you can do it, great, have at it, but you're not going to really miss anything by not doing it. There's nothing that's going to change in your gameplay, really. So Undying gets the honorable mention. Now let's move on to the final team that I think is not worth building, and this one's going to be a bit controversial. All right, and coming in at number 1, this is going to be a little bit of a tricky one. So this is Bifrost, and we know that the Mystic Raid team is going to be the next team to be replaced. However, we know that it also probably is not going to happen for the next, I want to say at least 3 months. So then why is Bifrost a trap team? Because it's only got 3 months left. That's basically it. And so who should be building them and who shouldn't be building them? Let's start with the easy one. So who shouldn't be building them? Basically new and mid-game players. As a raid mystic option, you can just literally use Vol, Deathpool, and a handful of collection of great mystic characters to be able to get your way through. Those could be your Eternals. That actually could also include Cosmic Ghost Rider. It could include Ghost Rider Robbie. There's all sorts of mystic characters that you could combine that are just solidly meta by their own right that you can get through the early raids, all the way up through Doom Raid, honestly. You can get all the way through Doom Raid 3 with a collection of characters like that. If you're in an alliance that is running incursion 1 or higher and you for whatever reason still haven't done this, then you might want to. The problem is that I would only put the investment that you absolutely bare minimum have to do to clear the content that they're asking you to do in your alliance, because it's not a team that you're going to get very good dividends out of now. At least in my opinion, I don't think that you will. I think that if you haven't built them yet at this point, that I think that it is indeed a trap, because, they just don't serve a lot of good value elsewhere. Yes, people are using them in the raid room and in Cosmic Crucible, but it's not actually that great, and they're pretty easy to beat in my opinion. There's lots of other options that you can use to do that. And I just don't think you're going to get some great dividends out of doing this now. I don't see a lot of value in the other characters elsewhere outside of Vol being the original character. We know, just like what I spoke about Deathpool, that they very well could bring Vol into some other team down the line. And so at least that's safe. But the rest of them, I wouldn't say is necessarily safe to build. And I would really caution doing that unless you absolutely have to. So if you're in an alliance where this is an absolute requirement, then maybe just do the bare minimum. But outside of that, I would really avoid these characters. I am doing my best not to build these characters on my alt account, because I'm just going to be using a collection of meta sort of mystic characters to go along for the ride until the next team comes out. So that's going to be the end of the video. Some other characters that I was considering adding to this list, but I didn't quite make it on here, just for shits and giggles. I was considering talking about Out of Time, because I'm not a big fan of the characters outside of Black Knight, who's obviously OP. The rest of them are so-so, particularly Starbrand. And I think that Captain America and Captain Carter aren't really that meta for new and mid-game players. I think that obviously it's great for veterans who have already done that for Rebirth, but outside of that, I think that for other players, it's kind of weird. So that was one thing that I wanted to include, but we didn't really get much time to. But hey, let me know in the comments down below anyways what you think about Out of Time. Yes, I know that they're a legendary unlocked team that's going to be required for the next upcoming legendary very, very soon, but you could still probably carry that shit with Black Knight because he's just that OP. But hey, that's just my thoughts. Anyways, that's the end of the video, everyone, and until next time, stay safe and healthy, and I'll see you all later. Boilon, signing out.